So we're going to take just a moment while some attendees kind of join us, but should we go ahead and start with a little assignment? Are there anybody who's like, I hate just waiting, Donna, can we get the show on the road? Anybody out there? Yeah, that's how I roll. When I'm in sessions, I'm like, we're here, let's do this. Awesome. So one of my first challenges, if you could, in the chat for our breakout room is, and I'm sincerely hoping this is, we're not going to be chatting with the whole conference, but we might. And they'll be just thinking, what a party over there. I want you to think of one of the favorite games you played as, I don't care, a kid, a young adult, a grown up, but you know, and I mean like a game, like came in the box game. What was the favorite game that you had that you played? Just kind of go ahead and pop it into the ooh, Red Rover. Send Felicia on over. I love it. I don't know Trouble, Tammy. What is Trouble?
Oh, that's a box game.
Very cool.
I'm going to change it to kickbox or kickball.
It can be either one. I like the box games. I played Don't Break the Ice too, John, with that little hammer.
It was awesome.
To keep the guy from, Risk. Yeah. Got some real strategic people. So for those kind of joining in, we're just doing a soft start with a little quiz question. Of if you could put into the chat, what was one of the favorite games you remember playing as a kid? And if you can think of, especially something that came in a box, that's really a great way to kind of start the conversation, but it could have been really active. We've got Red Rover and Tag and Risk and Don't Break the Ice, which I absolutely loved. Awesome. And I think, Acquire. I don't know if I know that one, but I think I could be good at it. You should see my shoe closet. Angela, I could play Acquire. I don't know. Battleship, fun. Very, very fun. Awesome. But let's go ahead and kind of start our conversation. Others may join us as they're kind of coming out of the main room, and that's okay. For those just joining, we're really starting today's conversation about tech and training with the idea of kind of fun and games, because I think that's a great place to start the conversation. So as you're thinking about maybe your favorite game when you were a kid, we're just putting that in the chat. And I'd love to tell you all, so one of my favorite childhood games was a game called Hungry Hungry Hippo. Has anybody played Hungry Hungry Hippo?
Yeah.
Yes. Right? Oh my gosh, Hungry Hungry Hippo. And so for those of you who have not played Hungry Hungry Hippo, it's basically this, I don't know, plastic square with kind of this dip in the middle and these little hippo figurines, and you click on the end and you put marbles in the middle, and the hippos try to like capture and pull in these marbles, and whoever catches the most marbles wins. And so I remember the first time we got Hungry Hungry Hippo in our household. I'm the youngest of 6, by the way. So, you know, we did a lot of like interaction and a lot of games, and we got the game Hungry Hungry Hippo, and we opened it up, and we did what I'm sure all of us did the first time we got something cool that we were excited about, right? You open up the game, you pull out the stuff, and the first thing you want to find is the instruction sheet. You remember that? You pulled out the instruction sheet. It was a brochure. Sometimes it was like trifold, or it could have like things in different languages on front and back. Do you guys remember that? Wasn't that the best part? Yes. Pulling the instructions, maybe and you read the directions together. Anybody?
Yes.
Yeah, everybody, they're like, yeah, Donna, that's, John's like, we did not do that. Yeah, so I'm really just kidding. Here's what happened in my family with 6 children. When we pulled out Hungry Hungry Hippo, we pulled that game out. We didn't care that there were instructions because we were pretty confident we could figure stuff out. We lost about 4 to 10 of the marbles in the opening of the bag. So our Hungry Hungry Hippos became generally well-snacked hippos. And all that happened by the time one of my sisters stepped on the box. Does that sound a little more familiar to anybody's game experience? So, some of us are nodding a little bit. So the reason I like to start that conversation, and I am going to share some screens kind of in and out during our conversation, just to kind of keep us focused and keep us together for today's conversation, is although we're talking about the idea of tech and training, the principles of how people learn, engage with their environment, find success, keep score, and try again are pretty universal. And so I think what's most relevant about that idea is sometimes we think this is kind of a brave new world. This is something that's, kind of challenging, and we could never, learn all this new stuff, and it all seems crazy. And the reality is the principles aren't different. Technology just provides a different mechanism to accomplish and carry forth the goal. So I'm going to rely on all of you as my friends as well. I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. Teams in our company is our preferred mechanism of choice. So I'm going to try hard in Zoom, but man, if I think I'm doing something or sharing something and it's not happening, somebody out there needs to help me out with that a little bit. Is that a fair agreement? Can I get some thumbs up? Can you agree can we all be in this together, kind of help each other out? Okay, thank you for that. And by the way, if you have the ability to turn your video on, it'd be really helpful, even in a virtual environment, to do so, because although we can't all be together, it is kind of fun to be able to see people we enjoy. And I'm not going to lie, as a facilitator, I will read your body language and I will accelerate or slow down or change topics. So don't be scared about your nonverbals. Thank you so much. Those of you who are like, okay, Donna, we'll play. I love that. So we're going to talk a little bit about tech and training, but this is a tech session, so I made some assumptions. One of the assumption is many of us have worked computers. So if you're in this session as an expert, you do tech, you lead tech applications, maybe you work with IT, please contribute. Thank you so much. And you know what, if we will just imagine you fabulous, Angela. I appreciate your chat note. Thank you. But in general, if you're an expert, we expect you to contribute, because I always say if I'm the smartest person in a room, I'm in the wrong room. And I'm pretty sure there's people here who have a lot to share, and we can share it together. If you're intermediate in today's session, that's okay too. Take what you can, engage where you're able, add value, and ask questions. And if you're a beginner, because we are going to use some external sites and links in today's session. And if you're thinking, dear Donna, and Team Chart, getting to Zoom was about as much of this tech party as I'm ready to play with today. You know what? You can just be a great listener and take what you can and be comfortable. So whatever place you're in the right place in today's session. So I am here actually. Sometimes people find it a little more challenging. They want to kind of scroll through the gallery, see each other, chat with each other. You have full permission to do that. This is your breakout. Make this session your own. But I kind of popped myself into the big screen just for this opening conversation, so we could meet one another and engage a little bit. The model we're using today, and I'm going to use kind of two hats. So hat number one is really the design of the session, learning about some key principles, tools, and resources. But the second part is actually modeling design elements of training, right? I always say I would never host a training I wouldn't attend. And we all kind of have our trainers pet peeve list, right? So one of the first things I'm going to ask us to do with this idea, there's a training model, and Bob spoke to it a little bit about that idea of bite-sized elements with repetition. But instead of we do 100% education, here's the information, congratulations, you're trained. We're going to use the model of a 10% of the training transfer is really education or information, right? Directional. And then 20% of the education is going to be exposure. We're going to do some things, maybe we have proficiency or maybe not. And the bulk of our time together, 70%, for those of you checking your watch, that means we're gonna do some stuff, is really experiential. And so it's touching it, it's doing it, it's engaging with it. And so to start that, I kind of a challenge for each of us. I'm going to ask you to kind of play with me. So just to kind of share this model, I'm going to do 10% of this conversation in education and 20% in exposure. And then we're going to practice something for 70% of this short 2-minute exercise. Are you ready? I'm taking that as a yes. There's some nodding going on. All right, so put one thumb up. And then with your other hand, point your fingers straight ahead. Wow, you guys are so good at this. You're like, wow, I think I did it. You did. Now switch them. So the other thumb goes out and the other finger points out. That's awesome. So we got it. So we're going to start thumb up and finger forward, pointing at people and up, and then we're just going to switch it. There it is. So that was really us getting kind of our assignment and working with it. So now with experience, let's go ahead and practice that. Just go ahead and kind of flip those back and forth. Yeah, and see if you can get some speed. Some of you are like, I'm really good at this. So some of you are like, I don't know what happened to my hands, but they're not working anymore. Okay, you can give that a shot. So some of you are still going like, no, I'm going to get my fingers and thumbs under control by the time we're done with today's conversation. The purpose of, I think, that is one, to kind of share the model. I'm going to ask you to engage in some things that might be new. I love that. So I'm going to ask you to engage with some things that are kind of new, and they might be uncomfortable, and that's okay, because we're going to be fearless together, kind of moving through, touching base on some key elements, seeing how they apply, and then we're actually going to touch them and play with them today. So there's 4 key elements or topics that are part of this session, but again, we're going to go quick. So this isn't a deep dive into any key topic, but it's designed to give us kind of bite-sized snacks into the concept, the idea, and maybe showcase some of the application. We're going to talk about user-generated content, the principles of gamification, microlearning, which used to be fancy and new, and now everybody's like, oh yeah, microlearning, that's a thing. And there's other people like, I don't know what it is, but it's totally a thing. So we're going to spend some time with microlearning as well. And then last but not least, here's me leaning over to the side, terrible facilitation and design, forgive me, for augmented reality. And AR has really been getting some steam in our hospitality work environments, and we expect to see that continue. So what we're going to do with each of those four topics, and with each topic, 3 key points. So for each of those topics, 1, we're going to define it. What is it and what isn't it, right? So we can all be kind of talking the same language. Where we can, we're going to explore it. We're going to see it, we're going to use it, and to the best of our ability, we're also going to share where those principles are already in place within our industry, and we'll also have the opportunity to do some of that sharing peer-to-peer. So with that in mind, I think we should get to it. What do you think? Yeah, let's do it. All right. So first things first, we know Chart loves Kahoot. So I do have a Kahoot set up for us today. If you've never played Kahoot, you're in for a treat. So what I am publishing right here in the chat is our Kahoot link. So I'm going to invite you to go ahead and just join at Kahoot. But I'm going to share this with more than just the one part. There we go. So here's the Kahoot link. You can copy and paste that into a browser. So you could open up like your Chrome or your Bing, copy and paste Kahoot. And I'm going to move our screen share into our Kahoot game. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and hop into a little Kahoot. And as you're able to log in, your names will appear on the screen. So what we're doing right now is, I'm going to move this over here just a little bit. You're all like seeing each other and seeing one another. We're going to go, there we go. We've got some people coming in. So you're just going to go to www.kahoot.it. Hey, Rachel. There we go. Hey, Richard. White case. Some of you are like, in case this goes badly, you only get my initials. I see how you roll. That's okay. This is a safe place to try things on. And so once you hop into Kahoot, it's going to ask for a game pin. Which is 2912054. If you happen to only be joining us on audio and can't see the screen, don't you worry. I will be talking us through this entire experience. Or if you are able to join on Kahoot, you'll also be able to see the questions on your mobile device or computer without having to view the screen share. We've got some people still signing in. We love it. We've got Jen. Hey, Jen, good to see you. The Calhoun is in the house. I'm going to turn on just a little touch of background music for us. You'll have to let me know if that gets too loud. I love it. Go ahead and, like I said, just take kind of a moment, get yourself in and set up. We've got some great participation. If you're still working with joining Kahoot, way okay. But the purpose of this is to really introduce some of our topics, because if we have experts in the room, we want to know about it. And we're gonna start some game. If you join late, feel free. So the first question is, gamers publishing tutorials on their tips and tricks on YouTube is an example of which of these ideas we're talking about today. Now, if you're thinking, I don't even know where to start, I can't believe we're starting with a quiz, this is just really a safe place. So when you think about, and if you've got kids, you've seen them, I don't know, they've watched like some other kid play Minecraft for like 10 hours, right? So yeah, that's an example of user-generated content, very nice. So user-generated content is, there's a platform and there's an option, people do stuff and it basically provides the training content or the direction. Let's kind of go ahead. Ooh, big scoreboard. See, because you do get points, as you know, if you've never played Kahoot, you do get points both for being correct and being quick. So it's a double-edged sword. So here's the deal. So Fee is in first place with 928, very nice. Let's check into our next quiz question. Applying points, leaderboards, or experience points to traditional learning methods is called which of the following? Applying points, leaderboards, or experience points to traditional learning. Many of us were in. That is kind of the formal definition of elements of gamification. So, and as we'll dig into gamification, gamification is just really applying the ideas of games that make us engage, right? Things that we do to play stuff, whether it's get points, solve puzzles, into traditional learning methods. So it kind of taps into some of that natural curiosity. Man, this is a group of experts. Maybe we should just call it. Fee, you're rocking it. YK is moving right on up in the scoreboard, however, very nice. All right, next up, question 3. The shift in K through 12 education towards student-centered collaborative learning is generally called, this is kind of, Mike's kind of probably nodding with me a little bit. You're seeing more and more of this evolution in K through 12 learning, focusing on really preparing students and learners for quote unquote, the real world. The shift in K through 12 education towards student-centered collaborative learning. Multimodal learning, I would have guessed that too, don't you worry. But if you do talk to K through 12 educators in the communities that you work or serve, there's kind of a formalized push into what's referred to as 21st century education. I didn't know a lot about it, but I'm learning a lot about it from my teacher colleagues in what they're really using to educate our current and future workforce. So very nice. Oh, that was a big one. KP, you're on fire. YK takes the lead. Yeah, it's pretty competitive here at the top. My goodness. All right, question number 4. This is a throwback. Pokemon Go has come and gone, but it's kind of a recognizable example of which of the following items? Is it pedagogy, augmented reality, virtual reality, or a simulation? Pokemon Go, yeah, it could be a lot of things. So when we think about augmented reality, and this kind of starts defining some of these things we're going to talk about, when you have a real space, when you think about Pokemon Go, right, you went up to maybe a building or a park bench and you held a filter over the top of this reality, right, that's physically there. And then the computer program recognized something about it and popped up images or some hanging content that was virtually overlaid. It took reality and it augmented it. It added to it or made it super special. So that's kind of what we're gonna be talking about today. Simulation, you would think so. A simulation is a little bit different. When I think of a simulation, that's when I'm experiencing an element as close to reality as possible, but I'm not necessarily in that reality. So if I think about like a jet fighter simulator, I don't actually get to fly the jet in that simulation. I would like to, but I'm going to have to learn to fly the jet in some kind of machine that does not necessarily involve me physically flying the jet for learning. So that might be a little differentiation. Virtual reality, I see we've got, kind of a little bit in there. So just for kind of, the commonness of definition, because it's a lot, virtual reality the physical, like the space in which you're working is all virtual, like virtual walls. It's usually done by the use of like a headset. People will usually refer to going into virtual reality. It's kind of stepping out of the physical world into this complete virtual 360 construct. And again, we'll get deeper in, this is a good, but man, we got some expertise. I love it. Yeah, a lot on the move. Here we go. YK is still holding on to the lead. Here it is. Question 5, delivering content in short single topic bursts defines which of the following: user-generated content, microlearning, gamified video, or social learning? Delivering content in short single topic bursts. Yeah, and it's become super popular. Many of us are really familiar with that as a learning method. Now, I think there's two things that we really like to call out as professional trainers and corporate trainers. There is a time and a place for microlearning. Microlearning is really effective for single skill repetitive task, right? So, dear Donna, cut the tomato. I can learn about cutting the tomato. I can cut the tomato successfully. I don't need to know really the tomato backstory. This could work for me. But there are some things in which microlearning might be a good follow-up choice for a refresher, but for items that are very complex or very deep, microlearning may not be the right best choice. So I think as trainers, it's important to know we love microlearning because people don't have a lot of time. But if I want to teach, for example, a manager or a supervisor how to respond to an allegation of sexual harassment, yeah, that's not happening in 5 minutes. It's just not. So you kind of want to differentiate that a little bit. We love microlearning and it's awesome, but microlearning has a lot of broad applications. It's not necessarily the preferred learning for all education. So when you start looking at things that are really complex, you might want to just kind of have a lot of tools in your tool belt. All right, fantastic. Yeah, way to go. JK's on fire. Nice. Moving on along. Last but not least, hey, did you know you could earn a spot as a professional car driver in real life by mastering which of these video games? You could earn a spot as a professional race car driver. This isn't the simulation, man. This is, I could get behind the wheel of a car if I mastered Gran Turismo. Very nice. Some of us are familiar. Yeah. And that's one of those examples. You know, one of the questions was, can you learn things electronically or in a virtual environment and have those skills translate into, you know, real application? Just because you do it in a game, can you do it in real life? And they've actually found that you can. And so in the World Championships of Gran Turismo, the top 3 spots have the opportunity to actually drive professionally. So I find that really interesting. I hope you do too. So, you know, here's the deal, kind of our podium. Let's recognize and celebrate our winners. There we go. AB, I think we should give you, 5 out of 6. JK, who got top spot? And the champion is YK. All right, fantastic and well done. So I'd love for us to take just a moment and go ahead, now that we've spent a little bit of quality time with our Kahootness. I think we want to kind of spend just a couple minutes, not even minutes, like 30 seconds maybe, just taking kind of some notes about why would we even share something like that? Like, why would we even spend time with Kahoot? You can come off mute, make some comments. Or if you don't want to come off mute, you don't have to, you can use the chat. Way okay.
Hi, Donna, this is Heidi.
Yeah.
We use Kahoot and it is very interactive. It keeps people entertained. You know, people really enjoy it. After I get off of virtual training, I get a lot of feedback how, you know, they retain the information and they enjoy it.
Awesome. I love that. Is anyone else using something similar for creating engagement with their teams or with their learners? I know there's been a lot of movement in this space since I call it the advent of the COVID event. Anyone else have some other great principles that you're using?
We use a Jeopardy game in new restaurant openings that you have a controller. People can hit the buttons. I forget the name of the controller, but it's just a simple website that you log into and configure your game, and it connects with the little handheld device.
Awesome. So there's a couple of resources that I'd love to share. And I always love to listen and see what everybody else is using as well. You'll also notice, and this is really a virtual facilitation tip. You'll notice I've taken my talking head off the screen and have added in the ability at the bottom for individuals to read as we go. This is a feature in PowerPoint that you can use for virtual shares. And it's kind of an extension of their real-time closed captioning. It can go two ways. Some learners are like, that's really distracting. Then I just invite you to kind of elevate your eyes a little bit, look up. But for others, especially if I'm working with restaurant operators who might have a lot of background stuff going on and might have a lot of noise challenges, or for those who prefer to read, they found that very, very helpful. So we use this addition very frequently when we're doing kind of virtual meetings or virtual conversations. The downside, of course, is the real-time translator doesn't always get it right. So you do have to prepare for that a little bit. So speaking of resources that help create engagement, I was a big fan of Kahoot for a long time. They were early, they were very successful. But I will tell you, as a current trainer, I had to take my live sessions into virtual online environments. I've been doing a lot more work with Nearpod. And so I think we'll share this presentation a little bit afterwards as well. But if you're looking for some just low cost, really easy ways to have that kind of interaction in your learning, here's some you might start with. I'm sure there's tons more. So we're going to now move into our next activity, prepping for today. And by the way, for those who are following along, we actually used Kahoot as our example of gamification, right? I could have introduced today's learning session with, well, let's get some key principles and agree on what is augmented reality. But what we did instead was we introduced kind of a little bit of energy, kind of a little bit of quizzing, some kind of stop and think. We paused to talk about it. The learner outcome is similar from push content, which is just me talking about it. But think about your experience as a participant. Would you rather receive content and information and process ideas through an element like a Kahoot, for example, or through a traditional kind of, here's the deck, just read it, figure it out, ask us if you have questions? I think many of us would prefer the first. I know I would. Remember, I loved Hungry Hungry Hippos. It stays with me. So before we go into our next activity, this is super complicated, so I have to bring you all with me. There are two steps. Step one, I want you to just think a little bit about a current training challenge that maybe tech can solve. So there's a reason you decided to join this session, and we're just really interested in what that reason might have been. So put some thought to kind of what's going on where you're like, yeah, this is what I want to know about. So while you're putting that thought together, if you've got a little notepad, make yourself some notes real quick. And I also know in every audience, there are those who love to like follow along, take the direction, answer the questions. And then there are others who are kind of the doodlers in the group, right? They're like, I'm a good listener, but I kind of need to fill the time, or my attention just doesn't hang out there. That's fine. We've got tools for each of you. If you happen to be in group number 2, there is, and I'm also dropping now into the chat a link where you can print yourself a little coloring sheet, and you can have some fun with that. So that's kind of our plan. So we're going to put our thoughts together. And while we're here having our thoughts put together, I'm going to go ahead and drop the coloring, the coloring hyperlink in, so you can follow along with that. And there's actually 2 links that I'm putting into the chat right now. So the first refers to Padlet. So it says padlet.com, my name, chart minicon. The second one is the Quiver Vision. Quiver Vision is where you go to get the coloring sheet. If you just want to spend some quality time decompressing, maybe you've had a super stressful day. And for the rest of us, I'm going to invite us to go ahead and, if you can in a separate browser, log into the Padlet for this session. And so I just want to kind of introduce this idea of Padlet. Again, I promised you this was going to be pretty interactive. There was going to be some sharing. So we're going to go to Padlet. The Padlet link is in the chat. It's also on the screen. It's an https://padlet.com/Donna Herbel Agency, because I think, you know, typing is fun. And then it's the chart minicon. So I had to find something that no one else had taken. And there it is. So I'm going to shift screens into the Padlet as well. And in the Padlet, when you open it up, you're going to find a space where you have the ability to add, well, this is just, my controls have vanished. I'm a little bit alarmed. No, there, they've come back. Don't anybody panic. I know you were worried for me. We're going to go ahead and kind of hop into the Padlet. If you haven't been to Padlet before, use something like this, you're certainly welcome to. And what Padlet is good for is just having an element of being able to kind of hop in. Some of us have already found our way, which I love. So if you're hopping into Padlet, and I'm just pulling this up on the screen, this is kind of a web-based ideas generation, right? When we talk about this idea of user-generated content isn't just push videos or someone recording themselves doing something. Sometimes problem solving or creating a repository of how to improve steps and processes. You know, there's some different things that you can do to kind of crowdsource or group source information. So I asked us to think about what training needs can tech help solve. And if you want to kind of hop into that, I love recipe challenges. You know, what we can do with video is a million times better. We love that. In terms of what can, you know, for any of these topics, and if you've already got some ideas about how could I or how do I use some of these elements we're talking about today, you can put those under the header. You can also, if you see somebody who's got your notes, or you're like, you know what, that's so true. You can kind of upvote or downvote and kind of share some feedback or comment on one another's notes. Now, the Padlet, one of the advantages to doing something like this instead of maybe the chat in a Zoom room is when we do work like this in Padlet or something that's kind of always open, always exists, anyone with the link or the QR code can come into this session, leave comments, reply to comments. You know, it's kind of used like a back channel in some cases. So you can go ahead. I see some of us are kind of checking in. Yeah, training needs, tech can certainly help with some of the variety as well. Solving some problems with user-generated content, that's a great addition. I've got already some tips on like how could we be using microlearning. John will be really interested in the point-based system to track, you know, user progress or performance. We're seeing a lot more like you can get your points, you can, whether it's you can get points, sometimes there's like a race to the finish, right? Augmented reality for job aids, it can absolutely take job aids to a whole new level. Especially if you're in an environment maybe where you're working with alcohol and you have to do identity verifications, for example. Instead of having people look at copies, they can actually interact with, you know, documents, for example. This is, I love to call out, I know Felicia, I might ask you, Felicia, just to come off mute if I'm not putting you on the spot, or stay on mute if I am, but Felicia joined this session with us in Napa in February of 2020 and applied some of these ideas into developing some job aid and job training for a new chicken sandwich. Felicia, would you be willing to speak with us about that for a moment?
Sure, I'm not able to do the video, but absolutely, yes,
Thank you.
we were able to use some of these tools, especially the augmented reality. We worked with Quiver Vision to create some customized tools that we could use to take the job aids and turn them into something more to bring it more to life. So users would just scan a QR code on a sticker that was by the sandwich station and see a quick video of how the sandwich station is built, but you within that augmented reality. So it's as you're standing over the cutting board, you kind of see it come to life. So we were challenged with trying to create the variety and really have engagement in the midst of not being able to do this training as we had initially wanted to in person. So using those and the technology definitely helps to get the learners involved.
And for those of you joining, I know if you reach out to Felicia, she can probably tell you more, but what I loved when I got the chance to sneak peek her preview link and was very impressed was, you know, many of us think about, well, I can use this QR code and put up a demo video and a person can watch the video and they can kind of do it right. But I may not be able to give them feedback, right? It's that trainer as coach. And so what I loved was when you put up this, the QR code and you turned it on, like you actually got, your hands were these gloved hands. And so you would grab the ingredients, build the item, and then you got feedback if you grabbed the wrong thing at the wrong time. P.S. I did. So I thought that was really just an interesting way of creating virtual, and it's really low cost, like no food cost. We're not waiting on the guest experience to try things on. So the ability to have something that's interesting, engaging for the user, like it's cool to use. So people want to participate with the training versus they have to. And it lets me do things that kind of even applied that the way Felicia set it up, even applied kind of some of that interactivity and game element of, I get it right, I get it wrong. Hang on, I got to think about that. It's not just quiz the question. It really validates my knowledge within the product. So Felicia, you were marvelous. I did not prep Felicia in advance, but you know, she is such a heavy hitter and a professional. I knew you'd step up. So thank you, Felicia, for that. This Padlet, by the way, will be open for a full 30 days after this session. So if you want to come back in and add additional comments, you're certainly welcome to. Or if you want to review some of these elements, you're welcome to as well. So we just want to kind of introduce some of this brainstorming, and I love the ability to share some information as well. So we've kind of put some thought to what are some challenges, and I should just check with the group. I believe I'm sharing on full screen, and so you're not seeing me drag pictures of us and footers all over the place, or are you? Are you watching me drag stuff all over the place? Nope, we're good. I'm getting a thumbs up from Tammy. I'm calling that good. I'm always, like I said, I'm super confident in Teams, and suddenly I realized, I don't know who that's happening for. And we're all friends. We can ask questions, right? So I want to kind of just, as we think about, while there's a coolness factor and these tools are interesting, why do we need to kind of shift the way we're working today? And I'm kind of preaching to the choir here a little bit, but essentially, different groups of teachers and instructors have really been talking about what's going on with learners. And I think what's going on with learners has certainly been disrupted within the past year. But I think what we've seen more than anything is an acceleration of the same. Now, this was actually a group really done by a workshop of instructors, and it's a little tough to read in the little. So I kind of pulled out their big comments when they've talked about what's the profile of a modern student. And on a side note, one of the reasons we love things like Kahoot or Nearpod or augmented reality and the Quiver app is Quiver is actually designed, those 3D augmented elements have been introduced to kids who are now 10, 12 years old. So this idea that people have kind of grown up with an education system or edutainment systems, if you will, that have encouraged them to learn and interact with the world in a specific way. If they have expectations of this is how learning happens, and then they run into the roadblock of corporate training and learning systems that never got out of the 70s, we're going to compound the engagement and the learning problem in our businesses and our operations. So that's one of the reasons I always say, if you're in training, corporate training or learning and development, if you don't have friends who are teachers, get them, because they know a lot about how students are learning and how they're being set up for expectations to come to work or for success. I think kind of the highlights that we already see, and this applies not only to training, but also just retention of new hires, especially those first-time jobbers that come to work in our industry and hospitality pretty frequently. They kind of have that idea of being dialed into big ideas, not specific, which correlates really nicely with Bob when he talked about get the big rocks, not the sand. Get the big ideas, save the specifics for later. They'll get to the specifics, but they're hunting for the big rocks. They don't want everything in an avalanche. They want things that they can really work through or work with. Technology-based needs to be kind of pushed out of their comfort zone a little bit. And the focus is really on learning, not memorizing. And we also see this kind of shift as well into the expectation of the learner that they can use technology to personalize to fit the learner's need, a lot more flexibility. And it's also important to use the right tech to the right job. Shameless shout out, if you don't have a teacher in your network, the teacher who is in my network, who helps keep me honest and keep me kind of up to speed on current and future trends is Denise Crafting. That's her Twitter handle. Denise actually oversees Train the Trainer for blended classroom and tech education for K through 12 students in the Greater Des Moines School District. So she's super handy. Feel free to follow her if this is interesting to you. But one of the other things that we've had out of that conversation is when we talk about our modern learner, and this was published by Deloitte actually last year, but when you think about in a typical work week of an adult learner, 1% of their brain space is what they have for learning and development, right? We talk about, man, everybody wants to learn. We've got this great content. But the reality is, and I want to call out what I think are the highlights of consideration for the end user, the end learner. Learners are already overwhelmed, distracted, and slightly impatient. They've got a lot going on. And when we talk about introducing things like technology for training, the tech has to fit the right purpose. It has to be engaging for the learner, because every time we introduce a new platform, a new piece of technology, something that's not integrated, something that we only use once, we're just adding on to the load of individuals who frankly have spent the last year doing the work of 3 people. So kind of warning there. How do we break through that? We're familiar with microlearning. Everybody here got microlearning correct. So I'm not going to show us how to cut a pepper, but that's one of my favorite videos. We're going to just kind of catch in some highlights. We've defined some elements, looked at them in practice. I think, John, do you have just a moment to come off mute? And I'm going to ask you if you wouldn't mind, just tell us a little bit about any work that you've been doing, I think, with kind of that microlearning or gamification that you mentioned in chat. Would you do that for us?
Yeah, I'll just talk real briefly about some product prep videos we've been adding to our online campus. I may even add one yet today that we recently cut, basically showing people how to open up a 5-gallon pan of mayonnaise and putting it into sandwich pans and wrapping it and day dotting it and the whole works. It's probably 1 minute and 5 seconds long, the way we cut it with a few graphics on it. But this is how people learn, and they just need to see it. They need to understand what they're seeing with a little bit of language on the screen. And we've done this already with green peppers, cucumbers, things of that sort. And we're going to go through the majority of our products that way.
I love it. And I think the important piece when we talk about microlearning, again, single topic like John described, we're putting mayo into bottles. We want you to use the right bottle. We want to make sure that it's dated and held right. In the minute it takes them to watch the video and really understand it with all the key points, most would not be able to read the detail in that same amount of time with the same level of comprehension. Right. So a lot of applications in microlearning, which are super common. One of my other favorite elements, so we've talked a little bit about microlearning, small bursts. Let's talk a little bit about gamification. And I'm going to share with us just the introduction to one of my favorite gamification examples. We see gamification, again, It's just the process of taking something that exists. Many of us who keep track of our hotel points or loyalty programs, those are all gamification. They're introducing like collection or success elements into a habit or a behavior. I'm going to share with us one of my favorite gamified videos. This was the one that really kind of made gamification go ding for me in terms of how do we create improved experiences. So I'm going to share this short video. We're not going to watch the whole thing. We're going to get through kind of the first scenario, and we're going to take a look at gamification in action. Does that work for us? I think we're doing it. And here we go, pulling it up. Takes just, you know, it's a little slow loader on Zoom, but we're doing it. I made that up, we're not doing it. I'll invite you to come on back to our presentation at another time. This file format's not quite playing. That was terrible instructor facilitation for gamification. But you know what we are going to take a look at? We're going to pause and take a look at our, since we were talking a little bit about AR, I'm going to shift gears a little bit and share when Felicia was talking about how you can take augmented reality. I'm going to share with us just a little bit of information on how might that work using interactive print. So let's just kind of take a moment and let's learn a little bit about this idea of augmented reality.
Hi, this is James Dearsley, the founder of the Digital Marketing Bureau. I'm just here today to show you how to use translation with augmented reality. In case any of you actually have brochures or literature which you may want to sort of translate some English text into a multitude of different languages without having to print lots and lots of different brochures. So this is a brochure just in front of me here, and I'm using the Layer app here, and you'll see it's just analysing the text you've got in front of you at the moment, and it should pop up with a little box in here. Now this box can be completely customizable. You've got here different languages, and ultimately as you click on a flag it changes to a different language, and obviously it's unlimited with the languages that you can use, but it basically means that you've got sort of multiple ways of showing different translations in a brochure, so it makes it far more cost effective for you. And because it's completely editable and customizable, you can do what you want with it. So that's just one example of how you can use augmented reality to help you with your interactive brochures and print. So I hope that helps. Thanks.
Fun. So you kind of get a snapshot of what augmented reality is really about and might look like. So kind of coming back to this idea of just gamification, how do we apply games? When you receive this presentation or review it, you'll have the opportunity to find the Deloitte video, or you can go ahead and just search it on YouTube. But it's ways to take information that makes it accessible for individuals and for learners. And sometimes you can do both of those ideas. Like you can do some things with video. The reason I wanted to pause for a moment talking about gamification and gamified videos along with augmented reality, you know, you saw in that example, here's this page, you can put an electronic filter over the top of it and it can change the language. Well, with augmented reality, you can take even something like a training poster with video, or you can take a quiz, or you can use augmented reality to set up like point of work. I know Chuck E. Cheese has done that, where they've actually put markers on some of their major games in their dining room. So if you needed to grab like the cleaning manual or the repair manual, you can just hold up your screen. It'll capture the information, pull up what you need based on where you are and what you're looking at. And on the video side, kind of that same piece, when you pull up AR, you can even put up like quick links or video codes or choose your own adventure or show me what's about to happen if I pull this lever, which I would find handy in a lot of points in my life, by the way. So examples of both gamification and shifting into the augmented reality example, we took a peek at how augmented reality could be used, for example, with print materials, but we're going to kind of enrich the piece as Felicia spoke about with her illustration with Quiver Vision. She reached out to Quiver And as I mentioned, there's a link. If you don't have time to do it now, you can go in, print off the coloring sheet, print it, color it. But I'll kind of give you a sneak peek of what might happen when you print, color your sheet, and then use the augmented reality screen to overlay it. This could be a fun take home for those of you who are going to take your workday home with your kids, or maybe they're working next to you. Not all schools are full back in for are back in session for full time. So we'll go ahead and take a look at kind of how even this quiver piece could be used. So here's an example of what would happen with the one of the coloring sheets you could print off, although there's many to choose from. How cool is that? Anybody else having kind of some fun with those ideas? Some nodding. I'm taking it. That's awesome. So I think as we kind of continue out our conversation or finish out our conversation, I'd like to spend just a few minutes kind of recapping where we've been and how we might be able to use or share some of this information. So we've talked about augmented reality. And kind of the next bonus is this idea of voice. And if you're interested in voice or chat bots, we did actually have a regional training forum here in Minneapolis hosted by the Vice President of Information Technology with Caribou Coffee, who provides some resources as well for us on how to actually build your own mini chatbot. It's easier than you think, and it's scarier than you might think. So if you're interested in that, please reach out to me, certainly as your facilitator, and I'd be happy to help with that information as well. So with that in mind, I kind of want to wrap our conversation and open up for some question and some answer. We talked a little bit about some key points. Thank you very much for that, Wendy. You're awesome. So yes, so I want to come into just some questions and answers and kind of come back through comments, but this would be the time to take yourselves off mute. And let's go ahead and just take, 2 minutes or so for some general conversation and question and answer as we wrap up today's session. Maybe in the chat bot, you could put in something that was helpful or a big idea you thought you could use. So, I like the idea, Mike, of poll everywhere. That was really a good suggestion as well. Anything you can do to kind of get some engagement. Felicia, can users set language preferences? That's part of kind of the design you have to decide, but there's Google Translate actually has some really interesting add-ins. If you work with developer and whatever platform your AR provider is, most have some pretty rich inputs. There's a lot more available in AR dealing with language and translation today than frankly there's ever been. I love it. Thank you. Good for asynchronous training experiences, Mike. Asynchronous training experiences when we're all not working at the same time in the same place, which happens a lot virtually. I think we've kind of answered some questions. Are there any others? Since we're closing down in 55 seconds.
Donna, forgive me if you went through this because I had to hop off for a little, but when you put yourself over your presentation, what were you using to do that?
Oh goodness, that's a Zoom setting. If you go to Zoom share screen advanced, you can set yourself over your slides and just use your slide deck or your presentations, use your virtual background and resize your image. Great question.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Boy, as long as we got a takeaway, Rachel, I'm calling it. Yeah. Any others? All right. If there's no other questions or comments, reach out. Thank you for making time to join today. I sure appreciate it. I hope you found some value. Let's get back on into the general session and see our chart peeps. Woo-woo!
Thank you, Donna. Very informative.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you all so much.
Great job, Donna. Thank you.